Hello, everyone. I'm Dominique Johnson-Lindsay, and I want to welcome you to the Active Listener podcast by Lightspeed. As a lifelong learner and the daughter of a Navy veteran who became an elementary school teacher, education and service are in my DNA. This foundation, paired with my love of technology, led me to these conversations with remarkable minds shaping the K-12 landscape. Join us as we amplify these vital voices and explore how active listening remains foundational to educational excellence. Whether you're an educator, administrator, or someone passionate about the future of education, there's something here for you to learn. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for another episode of the Active Listener podcast. I'm super excited to be here today with my guest, Dr. Matthew Woods. So I'm going to let Dr. Woods introduce himself, but I will say he is a deputy superintendent, a lifelong educator, and even sometimes a consultant. So Dr. Woods, come on, tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Well, thank you, Dominique. I mean, you pretty much summed it up eloquently. But yeah, I'm a lifelong educator, lifelong learner. I've honestly been in essentially every role you could think of within K-12. You know, when you think of from being a classroom a history teacher, the high school level, to a middle and high school assistant principal, a middle school principal, a director of student support services, an assistant superintendent of student services, and then, like you said, a deputy superintendent of instruction and leadership. I've been an adjunct professor at the college and university level. I have supervised student teachers who are out in the field. And then, yeah, when I have some free time, which Lord knows it gets smaller and smaller, it seems like, I do a little bit of consulting, helping other schools and districts and, all around the country with, discipline, MTSS, high quality instruction, professional development. So yeah, I'm kind of fortunate. Education has kind of been my thing, and it's been good to me, and I've been able to do good work.
I love it. Good to hear that. And I guess to just kind of kick off the conversation, want to start things at the beginning. I always think about this because everybody's story is so different. I know this because my mom is an educator, but what kind of inspired you to even want to pursue education in general?
Well, I will tell you this, and I know my mom is listening. She gets mad when I tell y'all the story. Family of educators, multiple people in my family, we're teachers, administrators, and so forth. And my mom firsthand was a biology teacher for many years. And then she became an administrator, an assistant principal, and a high school principal at the time. So I would always tell people, I was always exposed to education on both sides. And what I meant is all of us have had some type of experience with a teacher, right? Or an administrator. So we see like the interactions, the day to day. But then I used to tell people I got exposed to it at night. So I saw the long hours grading papers. When mom became an administrator, I heard the voicemails when people were cussing her out saying, "You suspend my kid again?" Da, 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 da. Like, I saw the late nights getting home, supervising football games, not getting home till like midnight, 1 o'clock. So I say all that to say, Dominique, I had no intention of being an educator. No ifs and buts about it. I was like, I don't need that life, right? The stress. And when I was about 16, 17, so going into my senior year of high school, I was with my mom at the grocery store, and this lady ran up and was like, "Miss Woods." Now, for full context, my parents divorced when I was little, and my mom had changed her name back. So I knew she was taking it way, way back, like back in the day, right? My mom had her. And, my mom was like, "Well, hey, honey." Now, that was code word, especially for all my educator friends, that I forgot your name, but I'm going to be nice. So, honey, when mom said that, I knew it was like, okay, I forgot her name. But this lady ran up, hugged my mom, snatched her son, and was like, "This is the teacher I was telling you about. This is the teacher that made such an impact on me." And she just started talking about all the lessons my mom did. Miss Wood, do you remember when you were teaching, the human anatomy, and you dressed up like a skeleton, or then you had the goldfish in your class, and we would die. Like, I mean, she just started just bombing in the mouth, right? showing all of these experiences, but all of these specific lessons, like to a T. And I remember standing behind my mom, so I couldn't see my mom's face because she was talking to the lady. But I remember telling my mom later, I had never seen anyone look at my mom like that. Like, you would have thought my mom was like a superhero to this lady. And I remember saying, "Hey, mom, do you actually want you remember that lady?" No, honey. That's why I said, honey. I don't remember. I've taught a lot of kids, man. And I said, but man, you like changed her life. I'm like, she's talking about all these lessons, and my mom was like, "That's what you do when you're a great teacher." Now, come on and pick your cereal. Like, I mean, she just went back into when you do whatever. And I remember really thinking about that, Dominic. It was like, man, I want to have that same impact. And literally, that was the day I decided I'm going to education.
I love it.
Mm-hmm.
So, because you've seen teacher to administrator and had all these like different roles, talk to me about what the journey from classroom teacher to administrator almost was like for you, kind of knowing that they kind of serve two totally different purposes. I mean, you think about it from the private sector perspective, teachers are very like individual contributors, but like team roles or like mid-level managers to like, administrator is a director. Administrator is a person of many different talents as far as like they're a people manager and not just this skilled person. So translating that over to like what it looks like, for education, what was it like for you to shift from one to the other?
It was hard. I'll be honest with you. It was hard. And what was hard was coming to the realization that everything that I did, I took for granted in my classroom. I assumed, I'm putting myself from being vulnerable on here. I assumed everybody was doing what I was doing in my classroom. I was very fortunate. I built a lot of great relationships with kids of all spectrums, of all behaviors. I had the kids in my class who were like, when you better get ready. It was Dominique. She come in, you better get ready. Dominique was great for me. I didn't have any issues. Woods, I've written like 20 referrals for all these kids doing this. I might have written 4 or 5 referrals in my entire 3.5 years in the class. Like, I never, like, I was just like, okay, it's like something going on here. And I remember my mentors and other administrators and folks who would come in and out of my class receive stuff. What always stuck with me is they always said, you're doing things other folks aren't doing. And at the time, I didn't really understand. I was just like, oh, okay. Like, long as you think I'm doing good and my scores are good, like, hey, okay, whatever. And it wasn't until I was getting that nudge from, my supervisor, my administrator, my assistant superintendent, Matt, you really need to consider leadership. You can go into leadership. And I tell folks all the time, the most powerful thing you can do for an educator is give them a key. And what I mean by that is when you have a master key, or in this case, just say access, where now you can start going in and out of classrooms, a lot of things make sense very quickly. When you can start actually observing others and you go, that ain't what I heard in the teacher working room, but you just said, I'm not seeing it. Like, or what I should be seeing. And I remember it really bothered me, if I'm being honest with you. I'm like, hey, like, this doesn't have to be that hard. So that's really when I started being able to have those kind of experiences where I said, well, now I really need to dive into leadership a little bit. Let me see if I can take some of the things that I have had success in. Let me see if I can take the things that when I'm seeing it from other folks, like, oh man, I wish I could have been doing that. Oh man, that would have been dope if I was doing my class. And can we multiply that? Can we multiply that experience for kids? Can we multiply that experience for families? And then in my next role, okay, the thing that I'm seeing, how can I take it and multiply it again? And that has really kind of been the progression of my career, like thinking through how do you scale the good stuff, and you do it in a way where people want it, where people see the need, the why, and they buy into it. A lot of times folks are like I tell folks all the time, it's very easy to just say like, this is what you need to be doing. Like I tell folks all the time, like, especially for your listeners who are in leadership roles, you can just walk out there and say that, like, you will do blah, 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 blah. And in some cases, any good leader knows, there are times you need to have non-negotiables. There are times where you're like, this is policy. This is the law. These are the expectations of like your school board, your superintendent, et cetera. Like these are things like we have to do. But honestly, Dominique, when you think about it, it's really few and far between. I tell folks all the time, like, if you think about the things that actually have to be like non-negotiables, they're really not that many. And pretty much all of them are easy lifts. Like, you shouldn't abuse kids. That's an easy lift. Duh. Like, you have to follow the standards that your state puts out there. Yeah, everybody has to be assessed the same way. Like, there's certain things where it's like, okay, these aren't like, these are easy lifts. Where the heavy part comes in is getting people to own it and want to do it. That's where leadership really comes in. That's where you have to really figure out, where do you dig your feet in the mud and say, hey, this is what's right for kids or right for families or right for teachers. So we have to be planted here, but how do we shift the conversation where folks see we all should be planted here? Like, we should all be moving to the same direction. That is where true leadership comes in. And that is where you really have to start thinking about how you're building and leveraging those relationships to get the work done.
That makes total sense to me. And I think anybody who's been in any kind of environment where we have to move forward as a team, that's kind of the environment you want to have, because there's the big goal, the kind of stuff you talked about that's almost like the non-negotiables of it all. But you don't want to just be made to be told what to do. You feel like you're providing value. So you don't just want to hear, you need to do said thing. And I also feel like all teachers feel this way. It's so funny to hear the spectrum of teachers talk about things. Everybody feels like their classroom is unique. Something is happening in their classroom that is not any other classroom.
Every time it's like, you don't get it because you don't see what's happening. And I'm just like, if everything was that unique, and here's where, if I can, I'll use it from an instructional standpoint. And you work for a company, so you're gonna kind of like, okay, I see what you're saying. So I say to folks all the time, let's say we have this curriculum, or let's say there's this type of test. Let's use this stuff. There's this type of assessment, because I don't want to say any of you, maybe your competitors on here and get censored out. Let's say there's like some type of assessment that needs to happen. And we're in all these different places, but everybody's using the same assessment. I often say to teachers and principals and other instructional leaders, okay, if everybody's able to use that assessment, there has to be some type of common language going on. Like, there has to be, because if not, it wouldn't be approved. So the first question we should really ask ourselves is, what is it? Like what has to be there? If everybody is using this, and yes, you're unique, your classroom is unique, your school is unique, your district, but everybody is using it and can use it. What are some of the common variables? And see, that's like what you're saying. That's where you have to get people to tap in and start seeing, like, well, what could that be? So if we're talking about assessments, and even for your listeners up here, here's a real easy one to think about. All assessments are built off action verbs. Kids are determining, explaining, comparing, contrasting, distinguishing, identifying. So all they're adding is content with it. So yeah, and most of the content is always the same. I said to somebody the other day, I don't care what state I go into, a main idea is a main idea. Text structure is a text structure. Like, I don't know what English you speaking, but the English that I'm seeing across all 50 states, that is like, it doesn't change people. So it's like when you get people to really kind of start thinking like, oh, okay, Dominic, I heard you. Now I understand the why. Then it's very easy to have the kind of conversations we're talking about when you talk about leveraging things from a leadership standpoint.
Gotcha. So something to kind of build off this just like thought process is, of course, we're talking about things happening with the kids or in the classroom and instruction, but obviously administration goes way beyond that because you're dealing with people's personalities, their development, like all these different things. And so for you as an administrator, like what ways do you kind of help bridge the gap that's like pretty meaningful to people as far as getting them from point A to point B with even like the non-traditional stuff, so beyond instruction?
Okay. But you mean like you're talking about like discipline, like behavior of students, for example? Okay.
Yeah, and just in general, like I guess my thought process is like when you want to get people on board with like stepping up to the plate and doing new things or being willing to try, because that's something, with our company, working with instructional audio, a lot of times our thing is we're trying to get a microphone and a speaker in a classroom where a teacher is like, I don't need that. My voice is loud. I've been teaching. But the reality of it is, even if you have and all of that is great, once you get the microphone on, there's a different experience that happens. But that buy-in to get people to just try to teach with a microphone on so you can speak in regular speaking tones so all the kids can hear, it's like so foreign to people that like they don't want to do that. Administrators are a big gap for us as far as like getting people to say like, hey, and I feel like the best of administrators, going back to the point you made earlier, the best of them don't say like, hey, you need to wear this microphone every day or we're writing you up. That's doing nothing for people. We get people to really kind of feel like, okay, I can make a difference in my classroom just wearing a microphone. Let me try it out.
Great. So the good and the bad with education. Education, for all the positives, education has some flaws, right? I tell folks all the time, the good and the bad. I tell my wife, with all the good, I know I get on your nerves sometimes, but I like to think I'm always good, right? So even when we apply that for education, one of the big issues that has always, always, always been a hurdle for our field is that we are slow to change. We are slow to change. One example I use with a lot of pre-service students when I teach a couple courses is I'll put a picture of a copier up there, and I'll put a picture of like a Scantron test, and I'm like, y'all do know when this came out, when these two things came out, people were like, oh my god, depth to education, what are we doing? Like, oh my Jesus, what's going on? Then Dominic, you laugh and see, I got to take you down the progression. Then I show them a chalkboard. I'm like, can you believe this technology when this came out? People lost their mind. Lost their mind. Chalkboard. So it's funny because the kids will be like, God, you're so funny. That I'm like, no, we can laugh now. But at the time, people would have been calling their union reps. People would have been like, I'm going to burn this place down. So I think what we always have to keep in mind for education and help our profession is get people to always remember what the main thing is. What are those main strategies that it doesn't matter what tool I have, it still comes back to this strategy, right? Like I tell folks all the time, and here's a way to think about it too, Dominique. When you think of the teachers, maybe, hopefully you had several. I always tell folks, not just one. I had several of them. But there were certain teachers that I tell people that it seems no matter what I give this teacher, they make magic. I can put them in any class and they make it happen. I put them in any grade and they make it happen. I put them in any content and they can make it happen. And I say to folks, what is the thing that those people have figured out that most people don't. And you know what it is? They understand high quality instruction. They understand high impact instructional practices. Whatever you give them, the curriculum, the different types of content, the different type of grade levels. Hey, I got my strategies. But these resources that Dominique and them can provide, oh my God, this will just help you take it to the next level. But at the end of the day, it's coming down. Do I have those strategies in place? And I think a lot of times folks have it twisted and they think a resource is a strategy when I'm using the resource to help support and elevate these strategies that I should know how to do.
I love that thought process, especially thinking through what instruction looks like, which kind of brought up a really good point about that. Instruction has changed so much. Like, and I think people think it has changed because of the tools. But I'm not sure instruction has changed that much because of the strategy. So now I'm curious.
There you go. Look, I was like, so I'm gonna give you an example. Here's one. So if you came into my classroom and I just start teaching and you don't know what I'm teaching, would it make sense for me to stop and say, like, don't you need an objective? Don't you need to know what we're talking about? Don't you need to know what you're doing? Don't you want to be like, well, do you know what you're doing today? Like, hey, and I tell folks this all the time because when we talk about instruction, I know you'll have a parallel with it. You do it in the private sector all the time. Guys, they have targets. They start meetings, oh, hey, guys, here's our target. Here's what we're doing. Here's where we need to see growth. Here's how we're going to measure, that growth over time. I said, hey, guys, in education, we call that a measurable objective, performance-based objective. How are we measuring? How are we assessing this happening? Like, it's like you have to sometimes help people just stop and think like, hey, just don't get all the fancy mumbo jumbo. Just talk this out. Like what you and I are doing right now. Just talk it out. Like, so if you came in here and I'm just doing stuff and you don't know what's going on, you're looking for like an objective. What are we doing? Like that is universal. That's where I'm going with it. It's universal. That is what stood the test of time. Test of time. When people back in the day were teaching, before they had anything, probably just had, a couple logs and some fire. This is what we're about to talk about, guys. Like, they're telling you the objective. Now we're blessed that, we got nice walls and smart boards where, hey, I can write it and keep it up there. So I don't have to keep repeating myself. I'm like, Dominique, kids, look, objective right there. Thank you, technology. Thank you, these 4 walls that have something to mount on there. Like, you have to help people sometimes not overthink. And I find myself doing that a lot with teachers, with administrators. Like, hey, just stop. Just ask yourself, does that make sense? And if it does, it's a universal strategy. We should always be doing it. So then it doesn't feel like a mandate. Oh, you're right. We should be doing it. Like, duh, this makes sense. All right, let's keep doing it. And now, going to what you were saying, now let's look at the type of resources we can to help you be more efficient in doing that strategy. Now the why has sinked in. Now, not only do I understand it, now I want it, right? Because now I want it. Because now I'm like, this is making this even easier for me. But I get what it's making easier. It's that strategy.
That makes total sense. So, as we're talking about all this, a lot of what you're saying, which I'm sure, even as you're presenting it to me, it sounds wonderful, but it sounds like, almost like ease, like you just get it. So on the opposite side of things, I'm curious, what do you feel like has been the most challenging moment that you probably faced since you've been in the education space? And then just hearing your kind of mindset about everything, how did you overcome it?
I think the most challenging thing for me in my career is when I realized that we complicate the most basic things in education. We complicate the most basic things in education. It's like we just overcomplicate, and it's with the right intentions. I want to make sure I clarify that. Like, people have the right intentions, but they are they're putting pressure on themselves on things that don't require pressure, and they're focusing on things that don't require much focus, right? So it's like, if I can just use another example real quick to kind of just steer around the show, folks. If you talk to people in business, doesn't matter the business, and even if they don't have this business, what they'll naturally talk about, if you say, if I was wanting to start a business right now, if I could have it my way, pretty much all of them will say, if you can, you need to buy real estate or get into real estate. Well, why is that? Why does that seem to be a common thing from pretty much any business owner? They either start a real estate or they try to make enough money where they can buy real estate. Because it's withstood the test of time. There's a finite amount of land. People always need land unless we grow wings or we live out, they put us on the moon or something, right? Or live in the sky like the Jetsons. So you got to have land. It's like, duh, yes. Now, we can go through the complications. Why is it hard to buy real estate? Blah, blah, blah. That's a whole different conversation. But it's like a gold standard, right? Education is the same way. There are some gold standards when we talk about education, when we talk about instruction, when we talk about curriculum, what it should look like. It's withstood the test of time, and it can't fail because it has worked over and over and over and over again. So one of the examples I find myself using with folks is that business now. Just like, so in business, why does everybody want to naturally gravitate to real estate? Like, so in education, it's the same way. But what happens is, unfortunately, sometimes I think the most basic things people just get bored with. And they assume, like, it's like, when I coach basketball. Doc, you want us to work on layups? Brother, you ain't Steph Curry. Let me tell you that. You ain't Steph. You ain't Steph. You ain't Seth. You ain't the whole Dell. You ain't none of them. You ain't none of them yet. You can get there. But right now, I need you to work left hand, right hand. Oh, you got that down? Okay, let's move out a little bit. You better make your free throws. Because, when I see Steph and Seth and Dale and the whole Curry clan, they were all hitting like 90% of their free throws before they ever decided to go out here to these 30-foot jumpers. Like, you have to help people help themselves and work through that progression. But you know what? It's boring making layups. I want to look nice. I want to be on ESPN, coach. Girls don't want to see me making a layup. They want to see me hitting the three and turning around and shimmying my shoulders, right? Like, I mean, you have to throw it back to people like that. And you have to make sure that folks understand. But there are levels to that. Those folks became great at that because they became masters at the basic stuff. They became great at that stuff because they became masters at the other stuff.
It's definitely something that we often kind of forget, or at least want to forget. It's very hard to practice that kind of level of discipline for those like really basic things. But whether it's education or beyond, I mean, it shows and proves over and over again. Like, as you were stating that, I was thinking through me just working in marketing. Like, I work for an ed tech company, but I work different industries before then. It's always the same, that marketing requires these things. And so, like, as much as people like, I want to be on social media and I want to do all this stuff and I love social media too, I'm like, you still got to send emails. You have to have a functional website. You have to do like all of these things. I think about it now because, and I do want to ask you a question about it, but podcasting, I think podcasting is obviously the wave. It's just fun. People like it. And I'm like, podcast is this, but anybody that has a highly functional podcast, they still have all of the other marketing things layered up under there, because how would you get the word out? How would people know to talk to you? How would people know what you're all about? Everybody doesn't have the time to sit through dozens of episodes before they figure out, oh, do I want to engage with this person or not? And so I just think about, foundationally, like, this makes total sense.
No, it does. And I'll even take it a step further. What do you want to have a podcast about? I had a couple conversations with some friends of mine, so I ain't gonna call them out because I know this is gonna be aired. And they're like, "Hey, Woods, I want to do a podcast like you." I said, "All right, cool. So, the technical stuff. This is what you need to do. Your RSS feed, your website. I know I'm preaching to the choir." And I said, "So wait. So what do you want to do your podcast about?" "Well, I'm not sure yet, man. But I was like, well, wait. Well, I did. We putting the road before the horse in the cart and everything. Like let's just let's make it make sense. Like, what do you want to talk about? And then do you feel you have enough knowledge base or enough resources or enough folks to reach out to, if you're starting to however you want to frame it, to even have a working concept? Like, do you have that? And you'll be shocked how many folks that I've talked to who've been like, I want to do a podcast. And I ask those questions and they're like, let me think about that. And I'm like, hey, because when you have that, the other stuff comes easy. Like, you're thinking about all the boring operational, the technical stuff. But if you're like, yo, I got this really dope content I want to talk about. I know what I want to talk about. I've got a clear message. I already know who I want to reach out to. Like then that stuff is easy because that other stuff isn't fun. But what's fun is your why. You know exactly what you want to talk. And like, oh, when I get this together, I'm gonna be number one on Apple and Spotify and the rest of them, right? But you have to know that. And like I said, from podcasting to when we talk about instruction, we talk about discipline, you name it. When people can't go to that why and be very clear on their intentions, that's where the discrepancy comes. That's when everything else falls apart. And without that clarity, you're just not going to get the type of growth and progress that you're trying to.
Agree 1,000%. And it's so funny because sometimes you consume something and you can feel that. Like, it's like they got ahead of themselves and you're like, what's happening here?
Mm-hmm.
So with that, you obviously have a podcast. That's like such an exciting thing to me. I think you are maybe my first or second like actual podcaster that has come to be a guest. So that's always cool within itself. Talk to me about what you felt like your podcast was going to be a vehicle to do for you or even for like just education.
Yeah. So my podcast, when it started, it's going on now 6 years, which is crazy to think about. And I started my podcast. So if everyone thinks about that time progression, that was in the middle of the pandemic. So I had an idea. I was like, man, it'd be really cool. I was still a middle school principal at the time. I was like, it'd be cool to do a podcast. I really don't know. Let me kind of think about it, but I was just busy, right? So then pandemic happened and lines started getting blurred. People were like, you say you working from home, but then you still working at 7 o'clock. Like, I ain't supposed to be doing anything right now. I'm supposed to be like watching ESPN, not still checking emails, right? And I know for me, I just remember having conversations with some of my colleagues, and because we were all separated, the social distancing, I really started diving more into using Zoom and other platforms to communicate with my friends and colleagues. And I really started exploring different social media stuff like, at the time, Twitter and so forth, just to stay connected, to get ideas and so forth. And then I started realizing it's pretty easy. Like, more but like, and it's convenient. I ain't got to wait till I see you at a conference to run these ideas by you. Like, this is really kind of cool. So having a couple conversations with friends of mine, they were like, Matt, we feel like you got some really good ideas and reflections. You should do a podcast. So, I went to one of my favorite universities all time, YouTube University. I don't know if y'all heard of it. We can learn a lot. And I just went on there, and that weekend, how do you create a podcast? What do I need to do? Okay. Like you said, that's an easy, like, it didn't feel hard because I knew what I wanted to talk about. So if you listen to my first several episodes, they were actually self-reflections, things that I was experiencing as an administrator, it was really kind of like a journal to myself. Like, okay. And I ain't gonna lie, Dominique, I might have had only like 4 or 5 downloads first couple episodes. It was probably my mom, my wife, and maybe my dad. He felt sorry for me. I don't even know. I ain't gonna lie to. I don't want to lie to the listeners. There wasn't many. But what came out of that slowly, then it went to 10, then it went to 20, then it went to 80, then it went to 150. I'm just, okay, got something going on here. And people were like, hey, I saw you take a picture with so-and-so at a conference. Or I see so-and-so follows you. Do you know them? Yeah. Man, that's really dope, man. Like, some of us have never met these people. Oh, that's my boy. Or I know her. Man, it'd be dope if you could get them on your podcast and have conversations. It's a great idea, Dominique. Let me ask him. And that, if you start seeing, so then if you follow my progression on my podcast, then you started seeing guests come on, right? Well, then once again, numbers keep going up. Well, then people were like, hey, I really like that episode you did with Dominique. Have you heard of this guy named Dr. Woods? You should invite him on your podcast. Okay, I'll reach out to him. So then before you know it, people started, and they still do, they started emailing me, hey, Woods, I think this person would be great on your podcast. Hey, I think you need to connect with this. So then over time, and I'm just trying to give you, when we talk about small steps into that progression, then when you started seeing my podcast, that's where certain people started appearing on there, like presidents of different colleges and universities, these big time consultants, these people who are superintendents, all this. That's when, if you follow the progression for folks listening, you'll just start seeing, like, I see what he's talking about. And then before you know it, you fast forward and it has been absolutely amazing. 100 plus episodes. We've actually spawned from Leading Out the Woods, we spawned into Anchor Chats, which is another like subcategory on the podcast. Now we have a Throwback Thursday that folks look forward to all the time because we have so much content. Now we're starting to do these special series. So we just came out with the Leading Out the Woods Principals Edition, which is a summer session just dedicated to building administrators and aspiring building administrators who send in a variety of topics and say, hey, Woods, can we kind of get our own little quick thing? I got you. We did 4 or 5 episodes we recorded that we're releasing the last couple of weeks. So it's just amazing, the progression with it. And like you said, when you know your why, I always have content I can talk about. Like I tell folks, like, I don't know when I'm gonna stop podcast. There's a whole lot more things I can talk about. But it's just been good because it has helped so many people, and I've had so many folks reach out to me who have been able to avoid landmines and things that I had to learn from in my career. It's really kind of paved the way for others to be even more successful, and do even better things than I have. So it's been a blessing.
I love that. I love that. And I hope this podcast continues to go on so we can kind of do some of those great things that you're talking about. Like, I would love to see that. And I think these tools are really valuable as far as hearing the actual voices and experiences of actual people that we know or have heard of, or districts that we've heard of, or maybe haven't heard of for that matter, but that they are actually doing the work. I feel like that is just so important, especially in like the education sector. I feel like people see a lot of surface level things, and I feel like people don't get the chance to like tell their story, tell their experience, share their ideas. And so I always love like all the education podcasts. I listen to so many now working in this space. So yeah. Looking ahead, I mean, you've talked about so much stuff today, from your experiences in the past, how you became an educator, obviously the podcast. What is your vision for the future for yourself and for education?
For me, I just want to hopefully continue to be around and supported by an amazing team and amazing people. When you're in leadership roles and you don't have a great team, it's a heavy lift. It's hard. But I am very fortunate because I've got a great team. I work for a great superintendent. I've got a great team around me. Like, it makes everything easier, and you're able to see the type of momentum and shifts that you want to see, in education, because you're doing what's right for kids, you're doing what's right for your community, for your families. So I always tell people, regardless of what I'm doing, I always want to have a great team around me, because if you're a leader and you have a bad team, I'll use a basketball. I'll just like you a great player, but you ain't making the playoff. You ain't even making the play in. Like, so you just screwed, right? You become a great leader by virtue of having a great team. Michael Jordan was a great player, but he had a great team. A great team. I tell folks, they went 72-10. That's a great NBA season with Scottie Pippen, who is another great player. Dennis Rodman, another great player. LeBron James, he didn't have as many great players as the rest of them did, but he still had Dwayne Wade. You get what I'm saying? So when you have great people around you, it helps elevate what you're doing, but by virtue, you help elevate them. So that's one thing I always hope and continue. The thing I hope for education is I just hope that as we continue to see growth in our kids, and we continue to see how our kids are developing, right? Because I have a 6-year-old and a 2-year-old, and I look at what technology is now for them, and I anticipate what it's going to be for them in the future. It is super important that we do everything in education that we're supposed to, which is cultivate and nurture high quality thinking, critical thinking. Like, kids, do you know that Woods wouldn't talk like that? That's an AI generated video. Like, I mean, like, guys, this is where I'm going. Like we have to really be intentional about when we talk about rigor and what we're doing for kids, because now when you talk about technology and other things, it's getting to the capacity, it's making things easier. But at the same time, if you don't know how to properly interpret and use it, it can be very dangerous. And you can't put Jack back in the box. It's already out there. So we have to teach our kids how to utilize this to take their lives to the next level. And when we do that appropriately, the amazing things kids can do. I love my kids to death. And I look at my son right now and I'm like, yo, this dude is 6. And I know for a fact he's doing stuff and interpreting stuff that I wasn't doing when I was 6. And I'm going to tell the listeners, like, my mom and dad are nice enough to tell me, he's smarter than you. You got a doctorate, so he's smarter than you, man. You need, they call me Al Jones. That's the kind of relationship we have. So, but it's a blessing, because I just look at him and I'm like, wow, when he is 36, what is he going to be doing? And what will he not be doing if we're not intentional about how we're teaching them? So that is my hope for education, that we all kind of keep that at the forefront and just remember what we're doing now is really paving the way for our kids. And that if we do what we're supposed to, we'll continue to make magic. And man, like I said, they're going to have us living on Mars or Jupiter. They're going to have us living somewhere.
Listen, as the parent of a just turned 3-year-old, I'm like, yes, you are 1,000,000% right. These kids are exponential. So we got to stay on our toes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Last question is a fun question. And I ask every guest that comes on the podcast, and it's primarily because we work in the sound space. And so people don't think a lot about sound. Like, it's always funny. Like, we ask sometimes, what's the biggest tool that you use in the classroom, or the primary tool? And people say, my this or my that. And it's like, no, it's your voice. Like, so we always thinking about sound. With that, what is your favorite sound? And it can be anything.
My favorite sound is the bass in my truck. So I love custom speakers. So in all of my vehicles, and I know my wife, she hates it, so I got to turn it down when I go home. But in all my vehicles, I've always had custom speakers. So I got my 210s, my little stealth box in the F-150. I got all my custom doors. Like, I do the whole thing because I like high quality, good quality. And it doesn't matter if I'm, listening to, R&B. So for my soul people out there, I like listening to Kim, Erykah Badu, or, if I want to listen to hip hop and I have, Gucci Mane on, Young Jeezy, you never know. You never know. I'm sorry, he's just Jeezy now. He ain't young no more. For the listeners, if y'all ain't old enough, you didn't know he was young before he just became Jeezy. So, I just like good quality music. So that is, yeah. So like when I ride with my wife or other people in their car, I'm very judgmental because I'm like, it don't sound as good as my quality, but that's okay. Just get me from point A to point B, and then we'll get back to my truck.
As somebody from the South, I can appreciate this answer like 1,000,000%, and it is so unique. So we have had some people say music, but not this specifically. So I love it.
See, if we had more time, I'd go further back. D4L, Shawty Low. I could keep going, but I'm gonna stop.
Well, Dr. Woods, I want to thank you so much for this episode. It was so good. I feel like I learned so much, and I'm truly just excited to hear from the administrator point of view about what's kind of happening in schools and what's the mindset. So I really appreciate you coming and sharing your thoughts.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
That's all for today's Active Listener. Thanks for tuning in. Share your comments on this episode on our Facebook, Twitter, or LinkedIn social media pages. You can visit our website at lightspeed-tech.com to learn more about our mission to ensure every student hears every word. And subscribe to our podcast wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Until next time, let your listening be as active as your learning.